So it's summer, as we all know, every 4 years, every 5 years? Every 4 years, the entire world gets together to celebrate the sports that nobody cares about the other 99% of the time in the Olympics. And as such, I wanted to make a video about my own experience at Olympic trials and how an idiot like me found myself there. Okay, I'm going to condense 13 years into like 3 minutes here, so bear with me. So I first started swimming when I was around 5 years old, when my mom had me join our local summer team, where half the kids knew what they were doing and the other half basically practiced drowning safely. That was me. Seriously, like I'm 5 years old. You expect me to be able to dive off of one of these? Ludicrous. It was a slow start, but I got some basics down before I quit for like a year. But then one fateful day on my grandmother's toilet, I decided it was time for me to return. Honestly, I don't really know what was going through my head. I hated swimming and put almost no thought into this decision, but at the time my brother was getting pretty good at swimming and I guess I was jealous. It was time for me to acquire some clout of my own. I went to my mom and told her I wanted to go back, and she thought I was crazy since I was miserable before, so she was like, fine, just don't complain when it sucks. This was a year-round club, so these were like the really fast kids in the eyes of the summer swimmers. When I first joined, I was like just as bad as when I was 5, but now I was 10. So it wasn't looking so good for me. These kids were swimming circles around me. But what I lacked in natural talent, I made up for with my work ethic. Honestly, I think I probably attended the highest percentage of practices of all swimmers in our club's history, or I'm at least in like the top 3. I never missed practice. I could count on one hand the number of practices I missed in the past 5 years that weren't because I was dying from illness or had some other swimming related thing. So I sucked for a while, and then I sucked a little less, and I got better and better by day, week, and month, such that each group on the team was only appropriate for me for like 6 months to a year, and then I would move up. Normally, each swimmer spends 2 years in a group before moving to the next, so this is pretty fast progression. If there's anything you can get out of this video, let it be that. If you fully invest yourself in something, you're going to get better at it, and eventually your work is going to pay off. So that was just my life for the next few years. Go to school, go to practice, play Minecraft, sleep, and repeat. I first started to get like really serious about the sport when I was 14, when I had just moved into the top group on our team. This was when I met my current coach and also got to know some of my closest friends. I will say, friends were made easy for me through swimming because I never really talked much at school, but when you're forced to swim thousands of yards a day with a bunch of other people, sooner or later you're going to talk to the guys. And I did, a lot, and it really developed my social life. All of my friends are swimmers. When I was 14, I started to think about what I wanted to do in the sport and what it would take to get there. And fortunately for me, one of my friends was and still is a mega nerd about swimming and had this all figured out since the day he was born. So I just kind of leached wisdom from him and hunted the seniors every day in practice. And I made some progress. My high school years were pretty much wake up at 4, go to practice, go to school, sleep in school, go back to practice, then come home, eat dinner, and sleep. We didn't have morning practice every day, otherwise I probably would have died, but generally we had 9 practices a week. I've trained for probably around 6,000 to 7,000 hours over these past 8 years and swum probably around 10 million yards, a guess which I can only make in reference to a training journal I kept for one entire season in which I recorded every workout I did. My freshman year, I joined my high school team and swam in their meets while still training with my club team, which was a lot of fun. High school swimming is much more fast-paced, and come sophomore year, I was good enough to be pretty competitive at the state meets. Then I qualified for some bigger meets like sectionals, did pretty well there, then junior nationals, and then a little later on, I went to my first pro series meets. I wasn't dominating or anything, but I was getting more experience working my way up the ranks. As I started to go to these higher level meets, I thought to myself, what would be the coolest meet that I could possibly go to? The one that would help me acquire the most clout, and that was Olympic trials. The cuts for Olympic trials are pretty much the top of the mountain as far as time standards go, and after you achieve them, it's just a competition to qualify for the big international meets. The time standards are pretty challenging, but there are a lot of people that make it there at some point in their career, but only a handful make it in high school, so this became my goal. But then again, there was this 12-year-old girl this year just putting Division I college athletes to shame like it was her part-time job, so maybe my life is a lie and we're all mere peasants. So it takes most people a long time to develop their skill set enough to compete at these meets, but it's not just like one day in practice you just level up and you can go to these meets. No, in swimming you have to prove yourself at a meet. So all this preparation comes down to one day that you have to be on your game, and usually these opportunities are few and far between. So especially leading up to the meets you're trying to qualify for, you gotta make every one of them count. This brings us to April of this year. Our club had 4 people who we knew were capable of achieving these time standards. 2 of us had already qualified, but my friend Jay and I were stressing out of our minds with the impending meet and limited opportunities. We had a meet in April where we had a shot to make trials. We're pretty similar swimmers, and one of our events that overlaps is the 400 individual medley. So we both signed up for that and instantly regretted it. I had never felt so much pain in my life. I missed the cut by 2 seconds, but Jay felt emotional pain, missing the cut by less than half a second for the 3rd time. Luckily, I had another swim I'd been training for. The next day was the 200 breaststroke, which was my best event and had been for years. Leading up to the meet, my stroke was feeling pretty good, so I was pretty confident I'd be able to get the cut. And I did. So I got my first cut, but Jay's fate wasn't sealed just yet, since just a few weeks later we both qualified in the 400 individual medley as well. But in a normal year, we probably would have qualified a bit more easily. Welcome to swim school. The thing you have to understand is that there are two main pool setups in swimming, 25 yards, which is referred to as short course yards, and 50 meters, also known as long course meters. But America is the only country that swims yards, while the rest of the world swims meters, making any large international meet, such as the Olympics, a long course meet, and hence the time standards for Olympic trials can only be made in this format. Now, I have no complaints with this. I love swimming 50 meters. When you train 25 yards for the entire year because of facility limitations, and then suddenly you have to race in meters where you have to go twice as long without a break, it doesn't make things easy. And then butterfly turns to butter cry, and butter cry turns to butter die. It's just not a fun transition. This year, the meet was split into a Wave 1 and Wave 2 meet, which basically made Wave 1, which was the one Jay and I qualified for, Olympic Trials Trial, since the way the Olympic team is made is by placing either first or second in an event, and doing so in Wave 1 would send you to Wave 2, where people actually make the Olympic team. We arrived on June 2nd and got our credentials. Everyone who qualifies for the meet gets a kickboard with the event name and their last name on it, and getting that kickboard felt like how I imagined it would feel to get a golden play button from YouTube, just thousands of hours of work seen in one tangible item. And as far as free stuff goes, we got a lot of stuff from our team sponsor, and I'm pretty sure I won't need to buy clothes until I'm 30. The first couple days were pretty much just loosening up after travel and getting comfortable with the facility. I packed my bag with my laptop and Nintendo Switch, imagining I'd have a lot of free time and need stuff to do, but we were pretty busy the whole time. Like, we swam twice a day to stay in the rhythm of the meet, and when we weren't swimming, we were usually eating, recovering, or sleeping. I know that sounds kind of boring, but a meet like this that you've trained for years to get to, you gotta take full advantage of it. The joys in the moments that you get to show off what you trained for. In the free time that I did not have, I played Plants vs. Zombies. A week before the event, I realized I was spending too much time on Reddit. I needed to replace it on my phone's home screen, so I replaced it with Plants vs. Zombies since I haven't played that game in years, and then I proceeded to waste all my time on that app instead of Reddit. Then when we got home, the app decided it was all of a sudden outdated without me having done anything. It was no longer playable. So now I'm playing Clash Royale. The facility was way beyond what you'd see at a normal meet. Normally it's just like a couple pools, one to warm up, and then the competition pool, but the CHI Health Center, that's where the meet was held, was quite literally built different. There was the main arena, which is normally a basketball court. They dig up the entire floor every 4 years to build a pool that lasts a week for this event, and then afterwards they tear that up and rebuild the court. The stadium was huge and seated about 17,000 people. There was this massive jumbotron hanging over the pool that was like the size of my house, and there were floodlights illuminating the pool, leaving everything else in darkness. It was a really cool atmosphere. Before each final session, they would turn out all the lights and have this laser light show with some really loud music playing. It was like swimming's equivalent of a Super Bowl halftime show. I mean, it was slightly lower budget, but it was still cool. The next room over was about the size of a football field, and they just put an entire Olympic-sized pool right in the middle of it, raised off the ground like it was a hot tub. Next to the warm-up pool was a smaller athlete lounge with some games. There was also a screen so you could keep track of the meet without having to be in the stadium. Jay tried to refer to this area as the Athlete Village on his social media. This being the term used at the Olympics, and us being mere peasants, I quickly made fun of my friend and laughed at him until he deleted the story. In past years, there have been therapy dogs to help swimmers relax in between sessions. Unfortunately, we weren't so blessed this year, but that didn't mean I wasn't going to try to fill this void in my heart. There was a lot more to the facility, like the testing rooms and everything. It was like an endgame dungeon. It was massive. Here are some pictures. So the meet began on June 4th, and I was swimming on the 5th and the 7th. First up was the 400 individual medley, and it did not go very well. I made finals, but only because everyone else also did garbage. Interestingly, about 80% of people who make it to trials go slower at the meet than they did to qualify for it, and I added time into my 400 IM, making me part of this statistic. But I wasn't satisfied just being there. I wanted to be in the cool kid club, the 20% who dropped time, so I refocused and prepared for my second event, the 200 breaststroke. This was my cool event because in prelims I popped off and dropped a whole 1/10 of a second from my best time, and even that was enough to boost me from the 20th seed to the 4th seed. So I made the A final and actually had a decent shot at making it to Wave 2, so I was completely locked in. I did nothing but eat, nap, and swim that day and the couple before it. Fast forward to that night, I was one of the later events, so I had a good bit of time to chill out and relax, so I just warmed up, stretched, and listened to music. Leading up to my race, I swam a little more, talked to my coach, and then I head to the ready room. The ready room is where you can play mind games and throw off your competition if you're evil, but most of us at this point were pretty tired and worried about ourselves, so not much happened in there. But imagine if I just sat right next to the top guy, invaded his personal space, and was like, "You smell." Imagine how much that would have thrown him off. Missed opportunity. We got to the last call room where they'd call you out one by one, and they had this weird policy where your clothes and stuff couldn't show any logos since it was televised, so a lot of people had their stuff duct taped by staff, but I'm high IQ, so I just wore my hoodie inside out. I tried to sync a song to time the beat drop exactly when I walked out, and I got this mega rush of adrenaline for a few seconds there as I was walking out. It was awesome. The stands were completely dark. My face was up on all the screens. Mom got cool pictures, but then I took my earbuds out and I was like, all right, I still have to swim. So we got on the blocks. I went out pretty fast, but then there were a couple kids who just took off in the back half of the race, and I fell behind a bit and finished 5th, adding a few hundredths of a second off the time I went that morning. It wasn't the swim I was hoping for. Obviously, I wanted to make Wave 2, but I also had some personal time-based goals that I fell short of. But I gave everything I had, and I was content with that. I'm really grateful that I had this journey and this experience at Olympic trials, and even more so that I got to share it with the people that have come to be my closest friends. And I'm grateful for you, the viewer, for letting me share my journey with you.